My brothers, welcome to this week's Vitamin G as we dive into a conversation that ultimately began when I was a kid with my mother and my mother's reference to an idea in the Bible. Here was the reference. The reference was this idea that a man's mind cannot serve two masters. We're going to take that idea and we're going to tie it up into the following. Not only can a man's mind not serve two masters, but a man's mind cannot serve fear and faith simultaneously. A man's mind cannot serve fear, there's the first one, and faith. There's a second one. Let's take a look at these two words. Let's take a look at the word fear, right? Now, I've heard this reference back in the day from some of my OG mentors. Fear is false evidence appearing real. In our world, fear itself is baseline of a story. And so what we're really saying is when we say you cannot serve fear, I'm going to have you consider what we're speaking to is you cannot serve a storyline that's going to give you what you don't want. A storyline that ultimately has you drift. A storyline that has you go to a place that you don't ultimately desire. You and I every single day are faced with these dilemmas, these stories that come into our minds that fill our minds full of fear. It's not that fear just shows up. Fear never just shows up. You don't have feelings and emotions that just fucking show up. Even if you don't know exactly what's causing it, there is something inside of your mind that when it's triggered begins to invoke a storyline because your mind is attempting to make sense of life. This is why stories have been the traditional way of passing down knowledge, wisdom, and information across all traditions from the beginning of time. So our stories actually matter. But the first baseline of stories that you and I are dealing with at any given time are these fear stories. Now, what's popular inside the marketplace are fear-based stories. And so our mind is constantly marketed to this idea that we will run from pain faster than we will run towards pleasure. This has been proven, and unfortunate or not, it doesn't matter. Human beings are predictably irrational when it comes to this. You and I tend to do more to get away from shit or survival than we will for abundance or possibility. This is why most individuals in a church setting will do more in the church setting to not go to hell than they will to actually go to heaven. They'll do more to not die with their bodies versus to experience the power and possibility of a body that's on fire. And so there's a challenge inside of this first story. Your mind wants to serve it, but it can't serve it and the second story. So what is our second story? A second story is a faith-based story. This means it's a storyline that's actually taking us towards something that we want. It doesn't exist yet. Even though our fear story seems more real, our faith story is a story that says, I'm clear about what I want and here's where I'm going. Now, just like our fear-based story, our faith-based story also has a story. It's not actually real. Both of them are creations of our own design. So the faith and the excitement and the passion and the power and the purpose that I feel when I tell a faith-based story, that storyline itself was also self-generated. But I can't serve the faith story and the fear story simultaneously. My brain doesn't have the ability to. It will switch task between the two, which means I can go to fear, faith, fear, faith, fear, faith, fear, faith, back and forth and freak myself the fuck out and feel a bit bipolar, and you've done this. But you can't serve both. I can't go north and south at the same time. I can't go one direction and then wonder why I'm not going the other. And so you face a decision every single day, which is the mastery of your stories. And my question for you is simply this in this Vitamin G. Where in your world right now are you currently stuck in a dilemma between fear-based storyline and faith-based storyline, and they're at fucking war? And you, just like my mother taught me out of the Bible growing up, are a man who cannot serve these two masters of fear stories and faith stories, and it's created for you a whole bunch of frustration. I want you to identify what that area is, and then ask yourself a better question. Why are you allowing this conflict of stories to continue? My friend, that's all I got for you today, and that brings us to a wrap here inside of this week's Vitamin G.